So, like most Gunners, I have spent a large amount of today basking. And everyone likes to bask in a last-minute goal. Even Spurs, even Palhinha took his shirt off and took a yellow card to bask in a last-minute equaliser at home to Wolves. Last-minute winner, even better. But there are levels to which this basking is even more important. Oh dear, my dog's trying to join a wedding photo shoot. Hold on, to save the wedding cake from the evil dog, little monster. The levels are so much redemption. Partially redemption, partially I told you so. I think so many of the moves. Marino coming on as a sub and getting an absolutely key equaliser at the club he used to play at on loan for a season. I'll tell you, with 70 minutes on the clock, taking off defenders to facilitate that. We were in a sort of 3-5-2. I say 3-5-2. It wasn't a back three in a traditional sense. It was more like a formation without a left back. Sometimes different players checked in. The level of performance from Martin Ødegaard. I mean, some of that passing, people were comparing it to Mesut Ozil. If you can pass like Ozil and work like Kante, then you can be a Ballon d'Or level winning player. Gabriel Magalhaes. Now, Gabriel was lucky. I've seen after the game, he looked up whatever his name is, Lord Voldemort, the one who's my mum's telling me his uncle's a boggly-eyed German comedian. I think I remember him from some of those panel shows. But for some reason, Gabby went and sought him out and gave him a whacked his wrist off of his head. Lucky not to get at least a yellow for that. But it does just seem to be murderable rules when we go up to St James Park. Guinness will remember Guimaraes' flying elbows smashing into the back of Jorginho's head, different levels of assault. In the first minute, not weird, you get away with it in the first minute, but zero attempt to play the ball, sort of a scissorsy trip from behind on Saka by Joe Linton that really, any minute on from 1 or 2, you're getting a definite yellow card. It's a ridiculous foul. Jared Gillett. So out of our 6 games, he's been involved in 4 of them. Now, there doesn't have to be corruption writ large. This is the thing I've talked about so much. The problem with having refs who are all Northerners who support the Northern teams, just like our media is all Northerners and supporting the Northern teams. I mean, how unprofessional was Gary Neville? When the winner goes in, I've now heard the commentary. Peter Drury dropping his football free verse, bits of poetry, and Gary Neville going, oh, poor Gary. They're desperate. Carragher and Neville would each far rather a Northern team wins the league than us. Whether it's City, whether it's Liverpool. Man, you aren't really in the conversation. But they massively favour the North, clearly. That's a factor. What gets highlighted on Sky drives narratives, changes what's happening. I mean, the Guimaraes' possible handball hasn't really been talked about. Shot, goes straight, travels a long way, hits an arm outstretched. Now, I've probably said it before on here, I've said it on various socials. I think the handball rule needs to be fundamentally changed in the penalty area. 80% chance of a goal for the ball striking a hand in a penalty area is a ridiculously excessive punishment, and my preference would be if it hits your hand, it's an indirect free kick. But even if we brought in an indirect free kick rule, if the ball is deflected off your body onto your hand, that's nothing. That's what the the late on Gabby Magalhaes one was, as it said on the big board. I have to say, live in the stadium, I'm like, that's a penalty. That's a penalty. I was absolutely terrified. Oh, what a weekend. What a splendid, spectacular weekend. Started off actually really poorly. A flat, flaccid, lacklustre performance by the girls. Got punished. Villa defended extremely well. Props to Anna Patton and their two, Vilms and DeLonge, the fullbacks, who I don't know, were both very, very good. And Villa, having done nothing offensively for the whole game, get a bunch of chances during injury time and deservedly score. I mean, it was coming. Gutter, absolute gutter. And I said it before as well, all this must-win game stuff. The Premier League is it's a long Premier League season with lots of points to play for. The WSL season is considerably shorter, and Chelsea are considerably more dominant than our rivals in the Prem. But what has happened over the last few seasons, last season, not the last few seasons, last season, Liverpool had effectively an uncontested procession to the title. The only way they've won the league, really, like I said, for many, many, many years. It upsets Liverpool fans when this gets said, but Man U and Arsenal fans, even Chelsea fans will have seen their team front run their way to the title. Man City as well, front run their way to the title, but also have big comebacks and late changes of leadership in the Premier League. Liverpool haven't done that since the mid-80s. We needed to contest. We need to contest the league title. We need to put pressure on Liverpool and see if they can take it. And last season we failed to do that. Now I would contend there was some bad luck, catastrophic injuries, and there were some scandalous refereeing decisions which put us miles behind early on and late on at key moments. Some ridiculous penalties and red cards you'll never see given again for anyone else. But as we showed yesterday, great teams get over those hurdles. Great teams can overcome, and that's what we did yesterday. It will have been an absolute sickener of a blow for Liverpool, and for some of it, I don't really understand how Newcastle have got themselves so het up about us. There seems to be an obsession with Arteta, and they're not rivals. Don't know, why he's so obsessed with us, but it's good to see a measure of revenge. They beat us 3 times out of 4 last season, far too much. And the 2 games up there, both of which I went to, they deserved to. They were the better team. They got beaten by Liverpool this season, and with 10 men, they won their XG battle, had more shots on target, and yet found a way to lose. I think they've faced the fewest amount of shots of any team in the Premier League. I thought, I think of us as having the best defence. Before yesterday, they had faced fewer shots than us. Well, a lot of our shots on Luton against Man U, we were terrible that day. But we had 20 shots at Newcastle. There can't be. I think Liverpool had 5 when they beat them. So I wonder if they've faced 20 shots already this season. It was full spectrum dominance. Almost double the possession, double the shots on target, nearly 3 times the touches in the opponent's penalty area, and more than 4 times the XG. They were less than half a goal, we were more than 2. 3 big chances. And it was justice finally delivered at the very last minute. A great trip. Went up with my boy and my dad, 3 generations of limbs up in the gods. It's so ridiculous, that away end. But a great trip. Went up the day before and had a absolutely spectacular meal out on a farm in the middle of nowhere out towards Hexham, west of Newcastle, a wonderful place called Pine. I would highly recommend if you go up there for a big treat meal. But, big outlay, but well worth it. We loved it. A lovely, lovely lunch, a great pub, the Broad Chair, drinks at the Bodega, another great pub, and meeting up with quite a few mates. I mean, all in all, just a perfect weekend. And then when you factor into that, on the way up, watching the Red Roses win probably the greatest ever Women's Rugby World Cup. Women's sport coming on leaps and bounds. I think rugby benefiting from the attention football's got. The Philadelphia Eagles beating the Bucks, the only other unbeaten team in the NFL, which I had to try and follow on my phone as we came out of St James Park. Ryder Cup, Team Europe eventually getting it over the line. Shane Lowry, I was going nuts on the train when that 5-footer went in. It doesn't really, as a weekend, come on, get too much better than that. Strategically, I sort of touched on that. To go into this 3-5-2, no left back formation for 20 minutes in a game where a lot of extra time was going to be added anyway, I was surprised by how little was added. I think Livramento, right near the end, was down for 4 or 5 minutes before he was stretchered off. Looked like a knee injury. We're getting more ACLs than we used to before. Is it to do with them playing too much? That's a separate chat. I felt for him. It's a sore one. I'm actually literally walking past the spot where I did my ACL, just over there in that corner. Ouchie. Ambulance came down there. They jogged round, turned around and went back the other way. I was gutted until my mate said, "Oh well, you're pissed off. At least you're not the person they're going back for," which was a fair call. Bold, 3-5-2, bold. Erdegaard on, bold. Marino stepping on, getting into the box as a partner. Eze in the middle from the beginning. So many of the things that Arteta's been criticised from, possibly rightly in some cases, he's learning from. He's one of the best managers in the world, but he is still a young manager learning his trade, willing to compromise. This talk of him being pig-headed, here's Rory Smith going on about his footballing tactics being frozen in amber. Which is absolute palpable nonsense when you consider how different each of our second place teams has been. The first one probably too attacking, the second one too focused on possession, and the third one really stymied defensively by injuries. But a completely different game. A great game for Eze, his best of the season. I thought an excellent game for Gyökeres, his best of the season. Baffled by Gillett in the second half, just let him get ragdolled around. Botman throwing him on the floor, Lascelles grabbing him by the face. Ridiculous. Some ridiculous fouling on Gyökeres, just allowed to pass. As I said, it seems a bit murderable rules up at St James Park sometimes. The crowd baying for blood and the referees waiting to watch it spilt. We calmed that crowd down a lot today for a game in which they were winning 1-0 for a significant amount of it. We sang, and we did not stop. They put you up there in the gods, miles away. But I've watched some of the highlights and you can hear us throughout. Yet again, on TV, this time with my son and my dad. I spent most of today watching fan videos of the limbs, listening to some podcasts. Tim Stillman said the most extreme, I don't know what phrase he used, but best limbs in years up at St James. It was carnage in the away end. Absolutely delighted to have been there. I'm missing a few coming up actually. Bit of a part-timer over the next few months, which is sad. But we've got some big games. We've got some big games to come. We're going to play Fulham and West Ham, both of whom have taken points off us in the last few seasons. We've got to go up to a decent Sunderland side, who are far worse Sunderland teams than that have taken points off us in the last few years. Scared of Xhaka banging one in from 35 yards, of course. The law of the X. Big games. First, Olympiacos, which, again, they're a team who have got a very good record against us. Have inflicted, one of Arteta's probably worst 5 defeats as an Arsenal manager, well, as a coach, as a first-team coach, manager. So, you can't write off Olympiacos. I've got no idea how they're doing this season, but I'll have to have a look at them before the game on Wednesday. What a weekend. I think I'm going to, after walking this dog, have to actually watch the whole game again, which I haven't done. See if I can work out what the tactics were in the last 20 minutes. The first 20 minutes, we were brilliant. Free flowing. It was a bit like the start of that World Cup, mid-season World Cup season, where we were arguably too attacking. And I think the key to a lot of our free-flowing football was inversion. The line breakers in that season came from Zinny deep. This time it was Zinchenko is replaced by Calafiori. His inversion is not at all the same. It's not about line breaking. It's more about chaos. But Trossard coming inside and joining up with Eze to pass the ball. Zubimendi finding little through passes. So much more central access, which we were a little bit allergic to last season. Amazing that we can start. We had a game plan, which was to not play a full game of Saliba, to not play a full game plan of Saka. And this squad is now so strong that we can sort of shrug that off. Mosquera got a half. Now he does make a bad clearance for their corner that Voldemort, whatever his name is, scores from. But, that can happen to anyone. Apart from that, not much creaking. We've got a player we can just slip in alongside Gabriel or Saliba, and he's come in for an absolute steal. Amazing. Saka, still not completely full Saka, but just so dangerous, and also far more inverted than previously. I feel that he used to do the start wide, run across the fullback, go into out, cut inside on his left foot. Those are the standard movements you associate with Saka. Seems to be very different movements this season. Picking the ball up more centrally, checking inside. Timber was amazing. Timber really overlapping a lot. Much more like a Ben White type performance from Timber, who I associate with carrying the ball but not running without it so much. He's really developing. This team, I love these boys. They are getting better and better. They're constantly improving. And when you've got these absolute muppets on the coach, Newcastle fans, you'll win nothing with Arteta, and ridiculous Liverpool fans on the football WhatsApps attacking Arteta. He has always improved players. He's improving himself too. This is a special team, and that was a special result. We have got the ability and the bodies to challenge on multiple fronts. Let's see what we can do against Olympiacos and West Ham. These are key games because they're both teams who've come to our place and fucked us. We need to respond to some of those results this week. Big games. We need to have 3 points in the Champions League and 3 points in the Premier League. We'll be expected to do so. Let's go out and do it. Come on, the Arsenal.